All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's get to this. We're talking about what happens if we have a quotient or we have division, basically, and a radical. We can still simplify it the same way. And the idea here is if we don't have just perfect squares being square rooted, and eventually we don't have perfect cubes being cube rooted and so on, how do we simplify that to get a better, a cleaner, a nicer looking, an easier way to think of, however you need to word it to be able to get the idea of what simplifying means, answer. And what we need to realize is we first need to separate the idea that the square root of 15 divided by 64 is the same thing as the square root of 15 divided by the square root of 64. Now, with this, I'm going to factor out 15, and I'm going to factor out 64. 15 is 3 times 5, so I'm done. I mean, there's nothing I can factor out there. But 64 is the same thing as 8 times 8. Now, I could have done the 2's and just keep dividing it by 2. I've done that in the past. That's what I do initially. But if you can see it, just jump straight to the squares. Okay, so what that means is I do have a pair here of 8s, so I can replace this with the 8. So now I've got the square root of 15 divided by 8. Now, since the square root of 15 didn't have anything to bring out or any squares within it, it's simplified. The 8 is simplified. And so my answer is simply the square root of 15 divided by 8 is the same thing as finding the square root of 15 divided by 64. Actually, let me say that more accurately. The square root of the quantity 15 divided by 64 in quantity. Basically, we're trying to mathematically say we're not just square rooting 15. So if I say square root of 15 divided by 64, it sounds like I'm saying the square root of 15. I jumped ahead in writing a number. Let me start that one over. Listen to what I'm saying and look at what I'm writing, and this is typically what I'm saying is what I'd be writing. The square root of 15 divided by 64. So if I just said square root of 15 divided by 64, this is what I said. However, this is what I'm trying to solve. These are two different problems. So this original problem up here is the square root of the quantity 15 divided by 64 in quantity. An informal way that I can think of saying is the square root of the fraction 15 divided by 60, or 15 over 64, or 15 64ths. That's another way. Now, when I say informal, what I mean is it doesn't sound as fancy as saying quantity. It doesn't mean that it's any less value, okay? So hopefully that cleared that up. Now, to work on basically on how we say things, that's what I was trying to clear up. How we work B is exactly the same. The first thing we want to recognize as the square root of 81 divided by x squared. Again, I know I said basically this as an example there, but you're able to read and follow. So if I'm only saying something or trying to tell you something without a visual, how we speak is much more formal. That's why we teach you the formalities. But if we have something to read, you can get what I'm saying based off of what you're also seeing. So the square root of 81 over x squared is the same thing as the square root of 81 over the square root of x squared. So all that's telling me is I need to factor out 81 and x squared. Well, x squared factored should be easy to spot. The square root of x squared is just x. Now, 81 could be a little bit more difficult, but I know its square is 9, so that means I have a pair of 9s. So technically, I'm taking all of that out. So let me show you what's technically happening in the background. Let me erase this real quick so I can be much more formal about what's actually happening. This is actually x times x, so there's a pair of x's. And I was dividing them to begin with, so I'm going to divide them to begin with. But what's actually happening is this. That 9 is being taken times the square root of 1. Because I took the 9 out of the 81, it became my coefficient, and what was left was just 1. Because that's just like a fraction. When I take out a 2, it just doesn't disappear. I'm dividing that number by 2. So here I'm dividing it by 9, which is going to leave a 1. And this is going to do the same thing. I'm going to take out an x, and I'm going to have to leave in a 1. Now, what happens is the square root of 1 is equal to 1. And that works for both here and down here. I don't know why I put an equal sign beside it. I think I was jumping the gun again. So since these are a fact, this is the same thing as 9 times 1 over x times 1, which is the same thing as 9 over x, because 9 times 1 is 9, x times 1 is x. And my answer to the square root of 81 over x squared is 9 over x. So, you know what to do. Questions, if you got them, get them to me, and we'll see you next time.